Today, you will be seeing your number one guide for the 2028 presidential election and just a basic overview of where the electoral map is shaping up. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content just like this. Looking at the 2024 election results, Donald Trump won with 312 electoral college votes to Kamala Harris's 226, winning a modern political mandate like no Republican has since the 1988 election, where Bush won in a modern landslide. Looking at this electoral map, Donald Trump did only receive 312 electoral votes as opposed to the 426 that George H.W. Bush did in the 1988 election. But given the circumstances with all of the political lawfare that was thrown at the incumbent president, as well as all of the smears on social media and through the mainstream media and all of the fake stories, it is safe to say that this can be considered a political modern landslide, given the fact that Donald Trump still won the popular vote despite being the first president to ever be a convicted felon. Looking at the electoral map now, we will be filling in states that will be over 15 points Republican on my generic matchup. Looking at Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, the 2nd congressional district is going to be somewhat competitive, but the at-large vote will be in the safe Republican column, as well as the 3rd congressional district, the 1st and 2nd yet to be remain filled. Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, West Virginia, Indiana, and South Carolina all fall in that safe Republican column with 115 electoral college votes in a generic Republican column as of right now. Looking at the safe Democrat states, the state of California, Oregon, Washington are all over 15 points in a regular scenario, as well as the state of Hawaii. We can also look toward, the Northeast. You can see Maryland is in this column, as well as DC. Massachusetts falls in this generic safe blue column, as well as the state of Vermont, including Maine's 1st congressional district, giving the Democrat 106 safe electoral college votes in this hypothetical. All of these states, except for Indiana, have voted for the same party in the last 20 years, making these states behemoths for either party on a hypothetical 2028 matchup. Barring a crazy shakeup, these states will most likely be in the Republican column given in 4 years. Looking at some more, specific details, we can see that both parties' nominees, J.D. Vance, the presumptive GOP nominee, according to the betting odds, has a very high chance to win the nomination, which can carry over a lot of Trump's voters. However, this does not guarantee that they all stay, and assuming states like Iowa and Ohio would be safe states in that scenario would definitely be a mischaracterization. Looking at the Democrats, the betting odds are much more divided, with Gavin Newsom and Josh Shapiro fighting for first place, with Stephen A. Smith coming at an 8% betting odds, even higher than Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and AOC, as well as Governor Gretchen Whitmer, making him a dark horse pick for Democrats in the 2028 election cycle. Looking at the likely Republican states, Iowa falls in the 9-point category in a generic matchup for 2028. The state voted for Donald Trump by 13 points, with the infamous Ann Selzer poll that had Harris up by 3 points in a matchup just a few days before the election was severely wrong. As we can see here, Donald Trump won the state by 13 points, and it was severely wrong, making it one of the worst polling we've seen in modern political history. But looking at this hypothetical, Iowa falls in a 9-point category for a generic Republican, as well as a 10-point win in the state of Ohio. They've been moving to the right consistently since 2012, trending to the right of the nation with this new working class coalition that Donald Trump was able to achieve in the last 8 years. However, I would like to specify if somebody like a Marco Rubio, even Nikki Haley, Greg Abbott, Brian Kemp, some of these types of individuals, Ohio and Iowa are not necessarily locks for the GOP. On average, though, these states would be in the likely Republican column, given all of the possible nominees. And J.D. Vance, I think, would be one of the only Republicans to still comfortably win Iowa and Ohio in a future election. Utah falls under the 15-point category at 14 points for a generic Republican. This area is a left-trending state. Donald Trump did fairly well here, only did a point better in the state in 2024 compared to his 2020 performance. However, I do think in a future election, the state can zoom to the left quite significantly. Texas and Florida also fall in this category as well, with Texas being about an average 9-point win to Florida's average 12-point victory, marking the first time that the state of Florida would vote to the right of Texas in many, many years. Looking at Maine's second and Nebraska's first congressional districts, both of these districts are solid wins for the GOP. Nebraska's first at 12 points and Maine's second at 10 points, marking this to be, solid pickups for the GOP, putting them at 216 electoral college votes, with Alaska being the final likely pickup on this map at just 10 points for the generic Republican. The state does have a liberal-leaning tendency trend the past couple years. It voted for Trump by 13 points. Not that much of an improvement from the last cycle, and so that is where that state is now falling in this new modern day. Looking at the likely Democrat states, Colorado, a 12-point win on average for the Democrats, about a point bluer than what it was in the last election cycle. We saw that Kamala won the state by 11 points. On average, a 12-point win should be expected in the state of Colorado, given a D+1 national environment, which is where this electoral map is actually taking place in, by the way. This is like a D+1 a popular vote win. So about 3 points or 2 points bluer than Trump's 2024 performance. Illinois coming in at 14 points. The African-American vote is still a Democrat stronghold, as you can see right here. The black vote is one of the most Democratic constituencies in the country. However, Donald Trump won an astounding 16% of the African-American vote in the 2024 election, showing that gains can be made with these types of states. New York coming in as just about a 12-point win on average for a generic Democrat. The state has terraformed itself to be more Republican in the past few years, given local issues like crime, and very unpopular Democrat politicians have been moving the state to the left ever since 2020, or to the right, excuse me. New Hampshire and Maine both fall in the likely Democrat categories. You see New Hampshire at 7 points for the generic Democrat, and Maine also at 7 points. New Hampshire is an anti-incumbent state and always swings away from the incumbent party, and a J.D. Vance victory or any Republican winning New Hampshire in the next election would be quite difficult and would require a pretty interesting combination of voters. Looking at the state of New Hampshire, this state has a very interesting profile in the American electorate. Looking at the state's demographics, you can see that it is about 40% bachelor's degree or higher, making it one of the more educated states in the country. We can also see, looking at some more demographics, it is a very English-speaking only country. We see voters, here, we see about 39% of its population are not U.S. citizens, making it very prone to questionable election activities. We can also see here that the population of the state that is significantly over 65 is quite high, and a lot of these voters, especially 65 to 74, have been turning away from Republicans. We can also see, looking at some income demographics here in the state, that it is a fairly high, income bracket with married couple families, which is pushing the state more to the left. You can also see, looking at the education breakdown in the state of New Hampshire, we can clearly see that a decent amount of the state has a bachelor's degree or has a professional degree, which also makes the state more Democrat in nature as of right now. Looking at housing or racial demographics, we can actually see when this loads that there is a pretty significant amount of white Americans in this area, which in the Northeast tend to be a little bit more liberal. And so because of that, you are seeing a little bit more of a shift, to the left for the state. The state used to be a little bit more of a left-leaning area, or like a kind of like a toss-up area. I mean, George Bush won it back in 2000, but it's no longer the state that it used to be. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, these are states that will fall in the likely category. As of right now, Rhode Island will be a 13-point win, Connecticut 14 points, and Delaware also 14 points on average in a hypothetical matchup. The state of New Jersey falls in the 8-point category in a hypothetical scenario as well. The state has been moving to the right, and once this gets updated with voter registrations, in the future, you will definitely see the state be a competitive state in 2028. I'm expecting the state to be decided under 5 points in the next general election. However, given the political climate of the state and the fact that Donald Trump had a very unique appeal here in 2024, it's very possible that Republicans do lose some gains in the state of New Jersey. Looking at the rest of the map, Minnesota falls in the likely category of 6 points for a generic Democrat. Minneapolis is a very, decently growing area, and it has become more urban, and this pushes the state further and further to the left. Virginia basically stagnant from 2024, just a 6-point win. Governor Glenn Youngkin, despite only winning the gubernatorial election, did actually make some strides in the state and has kind of helped the state make a little bit of a turn back to its original Republican roots. And so it is roughly about the same margin as Minnesota is as of right now. Looking at some of these other states as well, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, a 7-point win. I mean, Kamala basically won the district by like 4.5 points, 5 points rounded out. And so this district is becoming more and more blue-leaning every year. And so in a generic matchup, I would not be surprised to see Nebraska 2nd in the likely Democrat column. And looking at the final toss-up states, these are all of the toss-ups for this matchup here. You see all the states that will be decided under 5 points will be Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, New Mexico, even Arizona, and Nevada. So looking at the state of Nevada, this state does fall under the 2-point category for a generic Republican. The state is very non-college educated, which is a group that Republicans have been doing well with the Trump coalition. Now, will Republicans keep those gains or somehow lose the state is up to them. However, the Republican Party with voter registration trends has basically made the state a kind of leaning Republican area. And, Governor Lombardo is expected to win Clark County, in his reelection bid, and is even expected to win the state by over, 5 points. Looking at the state, of Nevada, this is a very interesting state because looking at its demographics here, you can see it is a fairly small state. However, when you look at its Hispanic population, this will very, very much shock you. You're going to see a very significant amount of Hispanic voters. You clearly see that there is a sizable amount in Clark County and even in Washoe. And you also see that there is a wide variety of demographics here. Almost 1 million Hispanic voters in the state, which makes it a pretty, a pretty prone state to the Republican realignment that you've seen, where Hispanic voters just shifted so much to Trump in this election cycle. Arizona, another state, coming in at about 4 points, for any generic Republican, which is a good performance, for a Republican in the state. The state was thought to have been moving to the left, but if Republicans just keep their gains with Hispanic voters, even if they lose just a few points with them in the next election cycle, they're still going to hold on to Arizona, which puts them at 236. And with North Carolina being a state with rightward trending, tendencies, it's interesting because this state is kind of probably the most purple state out of the whole country, really. The voter registration trends look good for Republicans, but compared to past elections, the demographics of the state are shaping to be something similar to Virginia and how it's been moving in recent years. And so this state's, future is a little bit unpredictable, but it does come out to about a 2-point win here. New Mexico is about a lean margin for a Democrat, just 4 points. Hispanic voters have been moving very significantly to the right, and with voter registration trends, even with some non-Hispanic voters, I think are actually going to help Republicans make this state competitive in the near future. There is a lot of, oil industry in the state, and Republican policies are definitely beneficial to the voters who live here. And so a 4-point win for the Democrat is sort of the average performance in the state here. And looking ahead, Pennsylvania does even fall under the lean category of 2 points for a generic Republican as of right now, given the white working class trends in Pennsylvania, as well as the major Hispanic shift. There are a significant chunk of Hispanics in Philadelphia, similar to like Arizona and Nevada, how they also have a lot of Hispanics that are predominantly Mexican American. And with that nationwide Hispanic trend, Philadelphia, as well as the white working class trend, pushes the state of Pennsylvania to about a 2-point victory here. And so looking at the electoral map, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia are the only states on the map that are decided by under 1 point as of right now. The Republican winning all three would spell a 312 electoral college victory. If all the Democrats, if the states go all Democrat, the Republican basically barely wins the presidential election. But usually, guys, and this is how this works now, a lot of the times the tipping point states and the swing states usually go to the winner of the general election. That's typically how it goes. And so if the Republicans going to win, they will probably take Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. If the Democrat wins, they will more than likely take Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. And somebody by the name of Election Pulse also brought up a really good point. When parties trade hands, they usually win a state that they did not win in the previous transition of power. Meaning, like, for example, Trump in 2016 did not win Nevada, but in 2020, Biden was able to win Arizona and Georgia, which Obama did not back in 2008. And so what's very interesting is that Donald Trump in 2024, when the parties flipped again, won the state of Nevada. And the rule, according to Election Pulse, is that you have to have enough of a voter sentiment with demographics strong enough to in order to kick the incumbent party out of the White House. As of right now, the demographic sentiment has to be so strong in one direction that the rule is they must pick up a state that did not win in the previous transition of power. And so in order for a Democrat to win the 2028 election, they would pick up a state that Joe Biden did not win, and the most realistic candidate for that would be the state of North Carolina. And a lot of the times when I've been playing around with my model, it always seems to me that the Democrat always picks up Nevada by like a tilt margin or like a point or two. And so that observation by Election Pulse actually seems to be definitely possible. And it is very likely that if the Democrat does win in 2028, they will take the state of North Carolina. Like, it's a very high probability that they do take the state of North Carolina based on the rule that I just told you guys. And so looking at the generic matchup for 2028, this is how the electoral map is shaping out to be in the near future. If you guys did enjoy this overview and video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.